Tonight we have esteemed honour to introduce a speaker who's been in the Dawah for a number of years, almost 20 years, as far as I can remember, particularly in the early 90s when I used to be in the campuses, university studying. He'd be relentlessly giving Dawah up and down the country. I used to see him bring a number of young students to Islam. Now, talk to non-Muslims. He's been in the field of Dawah and community work for well over 20 years. Since then, he's studied under many scholars and has gained a mastery of the Arabic language, studying abroad in Saudi Arabia. He's now the director of the Al-Jawziyya Institute, and he's a prolific writer as well, translating a number of classical works into Arabic, from Arabic to English. So without further ado, tonight's topic is called Taqleed and blind following, are they allowed in Islam?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. It's a Friday night, I know it's late, we want to unwind. But alhamdulillah, the topic that was chosen today, Taqleed and blind following. Just before I start, can I just have a show of hands who, those of you who have a fair idea what this talk is likely to be about. They have a fair idea of what we mean by Taqleed or blind following. Can I have a show of hands who kind of think they will understand what Taqleed or blind following is? Okay, we've got one, two, we've got a few hands. Okay, so do I take it that most people don't understand or don't think they understand what Taqleed or blind following is? Do I understand that? Okay, so let me explain. There is an issue in deen, in religion, or some people have made it an issue. Even though we will come to find out that it's not an issue at all, it's something very clear. But nevertheless, some people have made it an issue that in Islam, when I want to follow an opinion of a scholar, or when I ask a scholar for a hukum, an Islamic ruling, or a fatwa, a legal verdict, some people say, I have to know the proofs, the daleel, the evidence behind the ruling. I cannot take the scholar's fatwa just like that. I must know the ruling behind his fatwa. What is his proofs? What is his evidences? What is the basis for his fatwa? And such people say, if you don't know the proofs and you just blindly follow the scholar's opinion, the sheikh's opinion, then this is taqleed, and taqleed is haram, prohibited in the religion of Islam. This is what some people say. And so what happens is, those people who hold this opinion, they believe that every ruling or every action that they do in Islam, they must know the proof, either from the Kitab, from the Quran, or a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which justifies that opinion. And if you don't know it, if you don't know the proof, you shouldn't be acting according to that opinion blindly. In Islam, they've called that taqleed, and they say taqleed is haram. Has anyone heard this type of saying? When I was, when we were back in the 90s, back in the, actually not so much for me in the 90s, by 91, 92, I used to hold this opinion that for every ruling you take from a scholar, you must know the evidence. Otherwise you're making taqleed, blind following, and blind following they say is haram. And I used to be one of those people. And I used to teach that, look, you must know the daleel, the evidence, the proofs for your Islamic rulings. And a huge movement started, and there is still, I'm sure, when I came here about 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, I met 2 or 3 young brothers here who believe the same thing. And I said, inshallah, one day here I'll do a talk, trying to come to the talk. I actually don't see them at the moment. Maybe they're not around. Because what happens is when you take this stance, you believe that all of the other Muslims who say the opposite, which is, most other Muslims say, look, if you are a very big scholar, then yes, you should know the proofs and the evidences for the Islamic rulings. Because you're a scholar, you should know the evidences. But if you're not a scholar, and if you're just from the lay people, the amat and nas, you're just an ami, a lay person, then a lay person is not a specialist. A lay person, all he needs to do is he needs to ask a qualified scholar, and whatever that qualified scholar tells him, what fatwa he gives him, inshallah he follows. As long as this lay person has done his best to ensure that the man he is asking, or the person he's asking, is an alim, a qualified scholar, not just someone he met down the market, a qualified scholar. Then asking a qualified scholar, getting the answer and following it, even if you don't know the proofs, this is halal. This is allowed. Not only allowed, this is what the Sharia teaches. And the majority of people will say this. So this minority group, which is growing bigger and bigger, maybe every day, they say, no, all this is deviation, this is wrong. You have to know the proof. We have to follow the Quran and so on, we have to know the proofs. So that whole thing about Taqleed, blind following, it comes in this context. One more thing before I briefly explain. There is another issue connected to it, which is, okay, so there are these scholars, but we have something in Islam called madhabs, madhahib. And I'm not talking about madhabs or schools in terms of beliefs, aqidah. I'm talking about in terms of fiqh, Islamic law, rulings. And over the 1400 years, out of the many madhabs, the schools of Islamic law that arose and got established, only 4 continue to exist. Only 4 madhabs of schools of Islamic law continue to exist. Does anyone know what those 4 schools are called? Anybody?
Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi,
and Hanbali. That's it. The Hanafi school, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, the Hanbali school. And in mainstream Sunni Islam, the Islam of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, these are the 4 orthodox schools within which the ahkam, the Sharia rulings they're all in there. And so there's an issue that as a lay person, as an ami, a non-scholar, do I have to follow one of these schools strictly? Does Islam say that I must follow one of these madhabs strictly? That is to say, I should either be a Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i or Hanbali. Again, this has become an issue. Some people say, yes, you must. And if you don't, how will you learn your Islam and your deen? And then the other opinion is, no, you can't. Did the Prophet ﷺ do that? Was he Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali? Was Abu Bakr Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali? So no, of course they weren't. Therefore these madhabs, they're all wrong and there's a bid'ah and these are all deviation. We just have the Quran and the Sunnah. So this has become an issue. So much so, just to show you how serious it is, there will be people, if they find out you took this view. There will be people who say, oh, we won't pray behind this man because he has a different view than us. Let's say the people who are very strong on, no, you can't follow a madhab, and taqleed is haram. They will not pray behind, if they can help it, someone who maybe does follow a madhab, or has a different view in taqleed. And this isn't one or two people, these are hundreds, tens of thousands of people around the world. And towards the end of the talk, I'd like to just mention some of the bitter fruits, the wrong fruits that have developed because of this wrong understanding. So let's go right back to the beginning. The beginning is this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has instructed every Muslim to have this, and you can't be a Muslim without it, to have this aqidah based upon La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Meaning that my life is about worshipping Allah, that's the La ilaha illallah part. And the way I will worship Allah and live my life is in accordance with the teachings and the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the Muhammadur Rasulullah part. I will worship Allah in the way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to worship Allah. I will not invent a new way of worshipping Allah that is different to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this will be a bid'ah, an innovation. Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever does an action that we haven't commanded, that action will be rejected. This innovation, this newly introduced matter, it will be rejected, unacceptable to Allah. So we worship Allah according to the way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us, and this is the basic meaning of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's clear. What follows on from that is this, that those people that I love, from my parents, from my brothers and sisters, from my aunties and uncles, from my wife and children, from my friends, if they ever tell me something, do this or don't do that, and it goes against what the Prophet ﷺ has taught, what Allah has said or what the Prophet ﷺ has said, then at least in my heart, in my mind, in my heart as an aqidah, I know Allah's word is the highest. His word must be followed. The Prophet ﷺ's word, because Allah has made it so, must be followed. Even if it goes against my parents, my children, anybody else. So for example, if my best friend said to me, the one who I like so much, he says, oh Abu Aaliya, why don't you come out with us today? Why don't you come to a restaurant with us today and don't pray Maghrib? Or don't pray Isha. Pray Isha tomorrow, but not today, because then we'll be late for eating at the restaurant. Then even though I love my friend, but my love of Allah must be higher. And then if I should say, you know, I love to come to you to the restaurant with you to eat, but I first must pray Isha, because the command of Allah, the request of Allah, the command of Allah comes first, and then the request of everybody else comes second. This is one of the implications of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now, small difference. Supposing as a Muslim, some Muslim is in this exact situation and they went out with their friends and they didn't pray Isha. They know that they should pray Isha. I should pray Isha because Allah said I have to pray Isha. But because of weakness of faith, maybe because listening to shaitan, maybe because of listening to the nafs, they, instead of praying Isha, they went out with their friends, even though in their heart they believe Allah's word is highest. Then such a person is a Muslim, but is a sinful Muslim who has weak faith. Is a Muslim who has disobeyed Allah, but is still a Muslim. But if someone were to say, and listen to this very carefully, if someone were to say, look, that's Allah's opinion, you have to pray 5 times a day. In my opinion, I think 4 times is enough. I think in my opinion, we don't have to pray Isha, we go to restaurant. I don't, Allah, and I know Allah says 5 times, but I believe 4 times. then this person is not a Muslim. He's close to Islam, but he's not a Muslim. Look at the two types of people. They both went to the restaurant and they both missed Isha prayer. But the first person has a belief, has an aqidah, that yes, they should pray Isha. They must pray Isha, but they didn't, out of disobeying Allah. They should have obeyed Allah, but astaghfirullah, they didn't. So this man is a Muslim, but he's a sinful Muslim. But the second man, he doesn't believe that Allah's word is supreme. He believes that he can have an opinion equal to Allah or even better than Allah. Allah says 4 times a day, or 5 times a day. But I think we need to only pray 4 times a day. 5 too much. Then this man who doesn't pray Isha, but his aqidah, his belief is not that Allah's word is the highest, because his ideas, his opinion is, he thinks is better than Allah's. And he's not a Muslim. Okay. So at every stage, if someone tells us something very clear, oh, do this, and I don't know, Islam says the opposite. I should always do what Islam says, and the minimum I should have the belief that this is what Islam says. Otherwise my iman, my faith could be in jeopardy, my aqidah could be in jeopardy, in danger. Right? Where does that fit in with Taqleed? The Prophet ﷺ was sent to, initially, the people in Arabia. Initially, he's sent to all of mankind. But initially, he's in Makkah. Then, initially, he's in Medina. And then, the rest of the Arabian Peninsula, the Jazirat al-Arab. And then, the countries around. And then, the countries around that, the whole world. And when he comes to the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, and he lives with the Sahaba as a Nabi, as a Prophet, teaching them. Some of the Sahaba kept lots of company with him, suhbah. They were with him all the time, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu. And some of the Sahaba, they only saw him 2 or 3 times in their life, or for 1 hour, or for 1 day, or for 1 month, because they used to live far away, and they could only come to Medina now and again. But all of them are Sahaba. Those Muslims who saw the Prophet ﷺ even for a second of their life, they are Sahabi. The definition of Sahabi, companion, is a Muslim who saw the Prophet ﷺ even for a second and he died upon Iman. And he dies upon Iman. And that is a Sahabi. And roughly, there was about, let's just say, 12,000 Sahaba. Scholars differ. Some scholars say there's only 8,000 Sahaba. Some say there are 16 or 18,000. But Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani in the Al-Isaba, fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba, he says there's about 12,000. So we'll stick with that 12,000. Okay. 12,000 Sahaba. Some of these Sahaba could read and write. Some of these Sahaba couldn't read and write. Many of these Sahaba memorized the Quran. But not all of the Sahaba necessarily memorized the Quran. Some of these Sahaba, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, spent so much time with the Prophet ﷺ, and he trained them and he taught them so well that they became ulama, scholars. And other Sahaba, even though their daraja and maqam, their station is so high, they're all in Jannah, but they were not ulama. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ, as you know, he said something like, take the Quran from 4 people. And he mentioned Ubay ibn Ka'ab and the likes of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. So there are more than 4 Sahaba who memorized Quran, but a handful of them became specialists, ulama in the Quran. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, even though the Prophet ﷺ was still alive, he allowed 13, according to Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, there were 13 Sahaba who were allowed to give fatwas in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. They were the most qualified of the Sahaba in fiqh and fatwa, in religious law and fatwa giving. Even though there are 12,000 Sahaba, but only 13 can give fatwa. Even though so many Sahaba memorized Quran, they all speak Arabic, they've all met the Prophet ﷺ, but they don't have that level of ilm, knowledge, or fiqh, understanding, to be qualified to give fatwa. 13, 15, even if you say 20, if you say 100, out of 12,000. And this is where the Quran will say, and the Prophet ﷺ will say, the Prophet ﷺ, for example, will say, Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. The Quran will say, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will raise up in degrees those amongst you who believe and those amongst you who possess knowledge, ilm. So Allah will raise up in degrees the people of Iman, and in higher degrees the people who have Iman and ilm, knowledge and faith, faith and knowledge, even higher, the scholars. And when people say that we do not have clergy in Islam, we're not like Catholic Christians, there's a pope, then there are the cardinals, and then we don't have that. But we do have ulama, those who are more learned than the average Muslim. Those who, they had an ijazah, a permission, an authorization from the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, you are allowed to give fatwa to the people. The four Khulafa Rashidun were amongst them. The lady Aisha radiallahu anha and Salama radiallahu anha, they were amongst them. Ibn Mas'ud and Zayd ibn Thabit and Ubay ibn Ka'ab were amongst them. Abu Hurairah, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas were amongst them. And then what happens is, people like Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar, who were very young, so they lived a long time after the Prophet ﷺ, they are scholars, they have got permission from the Prophet ﷺ, and then they teach the next generation. And out of the next generation, they say, oh, you have ijazah. I give you authority, authorization to teach Islam and give fatwas. So from Ibn Abbas gave ijazah to Mujahid, which is his main student, to make tafsir of the Quran and give fatwas about the Quran. And 3 or 4 places in the Muslim world became famous for ilm more than any other place in the early days of Islam. In the first 2 or 3 centuries, 3 places, or 2 centuries, 4 places. Makkah, Medina, that's obvious one. Okay? And Basra and Kufa. Okay? In present day, occupied Iraq. Basra and Kufa. And there were other places, okay, but these were the 4 main places. Later on, Baghdad would become a big center of learning as well. And some of the Sahaba, they were in Kufa. Ali went to Kufa, radiallahu anhu, and he died in that region. I mean, he lived there. And he authorized, he gave ijazah to some of his students. And their students gave ijazah to some of their students, who then gave ijazah to Abu Hanifa, who became the scholar of Kufa in his time. And he died in the year 150 Hijrah. 150 Hijrah. Let's just say Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, let's say he died, let's say about 100 Hijrah, 108 Hijrah. Or say 100 Hijrah. Abu Hanifa, 50 years later. The year he died was the year Imam Shafi was born. He was born in the year 150 Hijrah. So Abu Hanifa is Tabi'i. He saw Anas. He didn't learn from Anas because Abu Hanifa was too young. But he saw Anas. And Anas is Sahabi. The one who sees a Sahabi becomes a Tabi'i. And the one who sees a Tabi'i becomes a Tabi'i. So Abu Hanifa, of the 4 well-known Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali. Abu Hanifa, from which the Hanafi school is taken, he is a tabi'i from the second best generation of Muslims. And then Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad, they're tabi'i. They saw the tabi'un. And the Prophet said, خَيْرُ النَّاسِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best of mankind is my generation, and the Sahaba. Then those who come after them, the tabi'un. Then those who come after them, the tabi'un, the followers of the followers. And during that time, Islamic law began to be written. And during that time, hadiths began to be collected. And during that time, the schools, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, began to form, as well as other schools. That's a brief history, it's just worth knowing. And in every age, the Prophet ﷺ gave ijazah to these people to become religious teachers and muftis. Then they gave ijazahs to some of their main students, who gave ijazah to their students, who gave ijazah to their students, who gave all the way along, up until this day. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ says, this knowledge will be carried by the trustworthy ones of every generation. And the reason why the Prophet ﷺ does this, it's to weed out the thieves and the charlatans from the real people. See, if we don't have this authorization, this ijazah, anybody can sit here and give any fatwa. Yesterday I was in the clubs, dancing and jiggling. Then today I became a bit more religious. I came to the mosque, did a few prayers. Tomorrow I'll go on the internet, to some internet website. And the day after I become a mufti. And I'm telling you, what is halal, what is haram, what is shirk, kufr, bid'ah. Who is a munafiq, who is not a munafiq. What scholar is wrong, what scholar is right. And I'm sure many of you know that this is happening under our very noses. MashaAllah, in 4 days. Brilliant. Or if you're an Arab, and I'm not having a go at Arabs, at least there's Arabic. And by Arab I mean not necessarily Saudi, one could be Somali. Many Somalis speak Arabic very well. Can be Maghribi. Al-Jazairi, some of them speak Arabic not so bad. But sometimes, Arabic, I can speak Arabic, so I can just pick up any book. Any book on the deen. And I can read it and I've understood. MashaAllah, I'm like a scholar. But you haven't been trained. You haven't been trained to give fatwas. If that was the case, all of the 12,000 Sahaba would have been muftis. But the Prophet ﷺ limited it to only 15 people who were qualified. If that was the case, all of the tabi'un would have been muftis. But there weren't. There was only handfuls of people from them. But today, just Arabic or learning the deen, reading a few books, and then we become muftis. And the Prophet ﷺ says in the authentic hadith, he who gives a fatwa without sound knowledge will have the sin of giving the fatwa and the sin of the one who he misguided with that false fatwa. So there is it's important to have a sanad. We are Ahlul Isnad. We are the people of Isnad, of chains. You say to me, Abu Aaliya, what gives you the haqq, the right to speak about this topic? And then I have to say to you that I have been given permission by ulama, scholars who have studied, who are fuqaha, who are scholars of law, of fiqh. And they have heard me, they have seen what I've written. I have discussed this with them since the early 90s. And they have said, go out and teach it. Teach this topic. But if I didn't have this, authorization, if I was just, this is my opinion. Yesterday I was in the clubs. Today I was in the masjid. The day after I'd start talking about big issues. Then I would be sinful for talking. Maybe he will be sinful. Shaykh will be sinful for inviting me. And I would be just misguiding you. So we are Ahlul Isnad. Our deen is based upon a sanad, a chain of permission and authorization. For what? For higher level knowledge, not basic level knowledge. You need no isnad to know that prayer is 5 times a day. You need no chain or permission to know that alcohol or khamr is haram. You need no isnad to know that you should be obedient to your parents. You need no isnad to tell you that fasting in Ramadan is fard or wajib. You don't need isnad for that. But to give fatwas, this is halal or this is haram, beyond the basics, one has to have authorization. Taqleed, they say in the books of Usul al-Fiqh, they say Taqleed, and I won't translate it here. Taqleed is from an Arabic word from qilada. The Arabs, even on the non-Arabs, if they want to put a rope around a horse's neck, or if they want to put a rope around a camel's neck, and then you want to pull, or a rope around a cow or a donkey, you put a rope around his neck, and then you pull the animal, you're going that way, and you pull the animal, and the animal comes this way. That rope is called qilada. Qilada. And the word taqleed comes from this qilada. Okay? Why? Because taqleed, they say, قبول قول الغير من غير حجة. Or بغير حجة. Taqleed is to accept the opinion of someone without knowing the proof. Taqleed, according to all of our ulama, scholars, is to accept the opinion of someone without knowing the proof. And the scholars say there is a type of taqleed which is haram. That is to say, there is a type of accepting someone's opinion without knowing the proof, and doing so is haram. And there is a type of taqleed which, to follow someone's opinion and you don't know the proof, but it's okay, which is halal, jaiz. And the lawful, jaiz type of taqleed is what Allah says in the Quran. Allah says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah says, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Ask. He didn't say ask and then try to understand the proof. He said ask. And the reason to ask is to know the answer so that you can act for amal. Once you have been given an answer, you have no doubt, no other doubt that, oh, this is a religious opinion. You must act. Because the alim, the scholar, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ, the scholar, the person of revelation and dhikr, he is like the doctor. And I know it's not a watertight analogy, but the ibra, the lesson is from the umum, is from the generality of the mithal, of the similarity. The scholar is like a doctor. You go to the doctor and he says, actually, you know, I'm really, really sorry, Mr. Sharif, but you have type 2 diabetes. You might ask, how many types are there? You might even say, what is diabetes? But you won't say, oh, rubbish, prove to me. You may say, what are its signs? You may ask. But the deeper the medical issue, the less likely you're going to ask, what is the basis for this? Because he may have come to this conclusion through years and years and years of study. And we accept he's a specialist. We do that with barristers already. We do that with non-Muslim lawyers. But when it comes to the fuqaha, the Muslim lawyers and scholars, it's a different situation. We don't think that they have studied much. They have. So taqleed, the permissible taqleed is for you, from the Quran, for you and me, when I don't know an issue, to ask someone who I believe is from the Ahlul Ilm, the people of knowledge, the ulama, and he says, I say, Ya Shaykh, you know this water that comes out of the tap? I heard that in London it gets recycled 7 times. We use it, and the same water is recycled. It's purified with purifying agents, chlorine and other things, and recirculated again to be used again, to be used again. at least 6 or 7 times. So, Ya Shaykh, used water recycled like that, is it jaiz, is it permissible to make wudu with? And the Shaykh says yes. Use water, provided it's purified and it's jaiz. Now, I don't know, maybe I don't know the reason for it. Maybe I don't know, I do actually, but maybe I don't know that water only becomes impure. Okay, there is some difference of opinion, but water only becomes impure if one of its 3 properties changes. Either its smell, its taste, or its colour, with something which is najas. Something which is impure is put in water, due to which its taste, its colour, or its smell changes, then that water becomes najas, impure, and I cannot use it for wudu, or ghusl, or anything like that. It's haram. But if it hasn't changed like that, then it's pure. Now, maybe I don't know all of that, but the scholar knows. And he just says, look, just turn on your tap and make wudu. Don't worry. Allah has given us an allowance for this, to trust our scholars. Sometimes if there is a doubt, I can always ask the same scholar again, are you sure? And if I have a doubt about that scholar, I can always go to another doctor of law, a scholar, and say, someone told me this, is this right? But generally we are allowed to trust our scholars. That is what is called Taqleed. And for someone to say, like young people today, and some of the young brothers which were in the masjid some months back, to say, no, you have to have the daleel, the proof for everything. Then it's like saying, well, brother, you're sitting with your legs stretched, what's the proof for that? Brother, you're sitting with your legs crossed, what's the proof for that? What's the proof to have a video camera in the masjid? What's the proof for drinking whatever you're drinking in that cup? What's the proof for this? What's the proof for that? What's the proof for wearing a green hat? Subhanallah. And you know, just the issue of tahara, of purification, and what water is pure and what water isn't pure, which comes at the beginning of our books of Islamic law or fiqh. Subhanallah. If you were to just study it quite thoroughly, with all of its proofs, maybe it would take you a few months. Maybe it would take you at least 4, 5, 6 weeks. What, in 4, 5, 6 weeks, I can't do anything with ablution until I learn the proofs? No. Not everybody is Allah created to have that level of academic learning. Allah didn't create all of us as scholars. Allah created some of us as people of sadaqah, people of jihad, people of khidmah, people looking after orphans, people of business, trade, and some people of knowledge. Allah has put virtue and skills in every human being, inshallah. And we recognize that. But of course, the ulama, the scholars who are warathut al-anbiya, the inheritors of the prophets, their maqam, their station is obviously higher than the rest of the Muslims. But nevertheless, every Muslim has skills. We don't all have to go and memorize Bukhari or Quran and study 7 years with the fuqaha to become a scholar of law. No. Then who is going to be the farmer growing the wheat? Who is going to be the engineer building the houses? Who is going to be the person sweeping the roads, keeping the city clean? Who is going to be the businessman or woman trading and making money and then giving it to the masjid to expand? Because it doesn't happen when you're on the dole. Let's all go on the dole. You know, yeah, and what? Ask the Conservative, the Lib Dem, for money for our mosque. MashaAllah. Please, David Cameron, extend our masjid. Oh, become a Muslim, then you can help us however you like. So it's the people with money, generally, who really, subhanAllah, we benefit from the Muslim, especially Muslim women and men who are businessmen and women. We benefit from, up and down the country, we benefited from them so much. Alhamdulillah. May Allah Jalla wa Ala increase people like that in khair and in barakah and in their tijara and trade, when they have the heart to give to the houses of Allah and to the causes of Islam. Okay, because we, the poorer ones, benefit so much. So that's the issue of taqleed. If someone says to you that, no, you have to know a proof, and if you want to not argue with them, that's good, but if you want to just ask them to make them see sense, ask them this. Where in the Quran where in the hadiths, even one single verse, even one single hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ or any of the Sahaba said, you have to know the proof for the ruling. If someone says you cannot do taqleed, you cannot blindly follow unless you know the evidence behind the fatwa, where in the Quran or in the hadith does it say that? There is, not only is there no Quranic verse or hadith, there is a consensus or an ijma of the scholars, a consensus of the scholars that tell us this type of taqleed, when you don't know some religious issue, you ask someone who is a qualified scholar for an answer, and whether he gives you, whether you know the basis for that ruling or not, and you just act upon it. This is a mercy from Allah to make things easy for the rest of the people who are not scholars, and they don't have to get bogged down in deep scholastic discussions, which is going to be well above the majority of people. That's the reality of it. And let me just quote one or two texts just to make this clear. And I'm going to quote some scholars who, I'm quoting them not because they are the only scholars in the world, but some scholars have said, many people are saying today, oh, you know, you shouldn't be following Hanafi or Maliki or Shafi or Hanbali. But you'll actually then find those same people, they're following Shaykh Al-Albani, they're following Shaykh Ibn Baz, or they're following Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen. Ajib. You can't follow the Imams who are that high, Malik, Shafi, Ahmed, Abu Hanifa, but you can follow scholars that are that high in comparison to the first set. No, this is, we call this ta'assub, hizbiyya, bigotry. My party, my hizb. So I'm going to read from those Salafi mashayikh, Salafi scholars, of what did they say about Taqleed, inshallah. I'm just going to be brief about this. I was going to do it in Arabic, but we're going to keep everything in English, just to the time being. Okay, Shaykh Ibn Baz, rahmatullah alayh, his fatwas have been collected in the Majmu' Fatawa wa Maqalat Mutanawwi'a, that's been collected during his lifetime, and then after he passed away in 1999, they continued collecting it until they completed the whole of his fatwas, okay, which is in about, the last time I saw it was in about 14 volumes, but I heard that there are more volumes after. Anyway, in volume 3 he says, he was asked about taqleed, he says, for a person who has an inability in the matter, meaning that he doesn't know the Islamic ruling on something, and he's not even from the scholars to know this. For a person who has an inability in the matter, then making taqleed of someone known for their learning, their virtue, and their firmness upon the aqidah is permitted by way of necessity. Shaykh Al-Albani, rahmatullah alayh, wa'afu anhu, he says, taqleed is allowed to a person who is unable to arrive at the proofs themselves. And Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, and there are many statements, I just quoting one from each of them, but you can quote 10 from each of them. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, rahmatullah alayhi, says, taqleed is mashru', is legislated or prescribed in 2 places. Firstly, if the person doing taqleed, which is called muqallid, if the muqallid is a layman who doesn't have the ability to ascertain the rulings for himself. In this case, taqleed is obligatory upon him due to the saying of Allah Ta'ala, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلُ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Taqleed is obligatory upon him. If he's a lay person and he can't ascertain the rulings for himself. Let's do an experiment. I just watched Blue Peter, they always used to do practical examples. So I'm going to give you a practical example. Practical example here, and we will take, oh, is this a Somalian Musaf? Is this no. Is this a Somalian translation? Ajib, is that Somalian, you think? Asking a Bengali if it's Somalian. Right, okay, no, it's got, is this Somalian or?
No, Somalian.
No, it's not Somalian.
Okay, whatever it is, anyway, it's got the Arabic there. So we have the whole Quran here, and we have in front of us Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan An-Nasai, Sunan Ibn Majah. So here we have possibly, leaving the repetitions, we have possibly Bukhari 6,000, Muslim about 5,000, that's 11, Abu Dawud about 4,000, that's 15, Tirmidhi about 4,000, that's 19, and the 2 Sunans about 4,000, that's about 27, at least 25,000 hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ from the mother books of hadith. So if I just did that and I said to any one of us, look, from the evidences of the Quran, we have the whole Mus'haf here, and 25,000 hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, find the Islamic ruling for this, that or the other. Find the ruling that, am I allowed to have horse meat? The issue is horse meat, leaving the fact that it might not have been slaughtered according to the Sharia, but let's just say it was. Am I allowed to eat horse meat? Is horse meat allowed or not? Where would you start looking? What surah are we talking about? Whereabouts in Bukhari are we going to find this? Whereabouts in... And that's just on one small issue, horse meat. So it's clearly, first of all, you have to know Arabic as well, and not just any Arabic, not the Arabic of the Somalians, not the Arabic of the Algerians, not the Arabic of the Egyptians, not the Arabic of even the Syrians today, but Fusha Arabic, the classical Arabic as spoken by the Prophet and the Quranic Arabic. I'd have to know that level of Arabic as well. Then I would have to know some of the understanding, the deeper meanings of them to find out. And sometimes the word horse, just like camel, you have more than one word for a horse. That's like you have more than one word for a camel. Jamal, Ibl, difference. Same thing with a horse. I have to even know that. Now, if this is on one issue, of course the lay people don't have the ability to, where do I start? I don't even know Arabic. And even if I knew Arabic, 25,000, maybe it's not even the 25,000, maybe it's in one of the ones that is not the 25,000. Or, then you read, or, I'll give you a clue, then you read, Sunan Abu Dawood. One of the wives of the Prophet said that in the time of the Prophet we used to eat horse meat. And then you read in the same Sunan Abu Dawood, one of the Sahaba said, we were with the Prophet and we ate horse meat. And then in the same Abu Dawood, a little bit down you read, and the Prophet forbade eating horse meat, mule and donkey. So what, is it halal or haram? So you've got some hadith telling me yes, and now some hadith telling me no. What's going on? So the matter requires great knowledge. That's why you have the ulama and the fuqaha. And we just have to ask when we don't know. Otherwise the whole world breaks down. I have to then learn Arabic, I have to do this, I have to study. I didn't even finish my GCSEs. And now I'm being asked to not only have a MA, a Master's. This level is not just MA, this level is like PhD. This level of fiqh is PhD. But here I am, in my days, you had GCSEs were broken into two. They had CSCs, which were even easier than the GCSEs, which we used to call O-levels. There are many Muslims who came out of school with no CSCs. They have no qualification whatsoever. They can't barely read. It's nothing to do with their iman or taqwa. You can still become, very pious, but they can't read. But you're asking them to become one of the greatest academic scholars just to find out the ruling on horse meat. No. If we keep to our level, and I'm just going to round it out now, if we keep to our level, two things will happen. One, Allah will bless us in our lives. He will teach us humility. Because part of humility, tawadu', is knowing your level and not stepping beyond your level. To step beyond your level is a type of kibr or arrogance, whether you realize it or not, whether we realize it or not. Here is a man, he's 50 years old, 60 years old. He has 5 children, mashallah. Here is a youth, he's from the shabab, he's 17 years old. And he's telling this man, 50-year-old man, the way you should bring up your children, you should do this, you should do that. A'udhu billah. What's good? Be quiet. 17 years old. You've hardly got any hair under your chin or under your armpits. And you're telling a man who has 5 children how to raise his children. The reason why you do that is not through jahal, ignorance. It's through kibr, arrogance. You just don't know your maqam, your station. The same thing if we take spiritual fathers, the ulama, they are like our spiritual fathers. Here is an alim, he's memorized Quran, even in 10 readings. He's memorized so much of the hadith. He's done 15 years of Islamic law. He's read this, he's done that, he's studied that. He's from the Ahlul Isnad. He's part of the unbroken chain all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. His teachers have instructed him and given him ijazah from his teachers, all the way back to the great imams, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. And I know he's one of them, but I'm going to argue with him. Oh yes, but I read in a hadith. What hadith did I read? And what language did I read in? English. Who translated it? Because most of the translations, subhanAllah, the level of English speaking in the country is poor, let alone the level of English speaking amongst the Muslims, second and third generation Muslims that were born here, is really poor. Educationally, in the UK, not in the world, just in the UK, the highest people in the league table, the greatest achievers in the school, college, university league tables are Indian boys, Indian girls and Indian boys. Throw in the Sri Lankan boys and girls as well. And the Chinese are just above the Indians. Ooh. You can see where India and China are going. At the lowest end of the league table are the Bengali and the Pakistani girls. Then lower than that is the Bengali and the Pakistani boys. The majority of those Bengali and Pakistani boys and girls are Muslims. The majority of the Muslims in this country are from Pakistan and Bangladesh. That forms at least 80% of the Muslim population. We have the lowest educational record. That's fine. It's nothing to do with Iman. Allah won't ask me what degree I have, what PhD I have or I don't have. Allah will ask me about prayer and fasting. Did I speak the truth? Was I kind to my parents? These type of things. No doubt at all. He'll also ask me, did I have a halal income? And the easiest way to have a halal income is if I have a good education, secular education, to get a good job out of the few jobs that have been made. No doubt at all. So I'm not having a go at the Imam, I'm talking about the academic level. And yet from those academic level, you have so many young brothers who say, oh, well, I need to study for myself. You can. Under qualified instructors, if you're patient, even someone with low academic skills, who knows, Allah could take them as high as possible, like a mountain. But subhanAllah, you yourself know that you can't understand very well. You can't concentrate on writing more than 10 minutes before you doze off. And you want to learn the likes of the great Imams, and you want to then challenge the scholars. This is not ignorance, this is arrogance. And Allah hates arrogance. And arrogance causes a hijab, a veil to come over the heart. It blocks the nur of Allah. Then it goes a step further. Even in Shaykh Al-Albani's time, when Shaykh Al-Albani and Ibn Baz, when he was the Chancellor of the Islamic University of Medina back in the 70s, there was a group of, and I'm just giving one example, but it's a historical fact. There were a group of committed young men, multazimun men, beards and turbans, and they just wanted to follow the Quran and Hadith. And they were a bit worried that, you know what, all of these scholars are adding too much. They're doing this and they're doing that, and we want to go back to the pure Islam. So in English, you call them puritanical Muslims. And they came to Shaykh Ibn Baz, and they went to Shaykh Al-Albani. And Shaykh Al-Albani and Ibn Baz, they encouraged them in few things, and they tried to correct them in a few other things. But even after a little while, they thought, well, even these scholars, they've compromised. They're not on the pure Islam. We go directly, we can go directly. Now we know the Arabic, we can go directly. They ended up, Juhayman and co, ended up taking over the Haram of Makkah back in, was it 79?
Yes,
79. Okay, look, subhanAllah. 79, and then all that palaver that happened in the Haram, and the French had to come in, the Secret Service, to get them out, and so many people were killed in the Haram. Now, that doesn't happen often, but what was the seeds of that? The seeds of that, there were these young men, and there were some women, and there was the issue of someone had a dream that someone's a Mahdi, but leaving that, they thought that, you know what, we know Arabic, we've got the hadiths here ourselves, we know better than the scholars. And then they did what they did. The whole thing about whether you can strap a bomb to yourself and go into a cafe and just blow up non-Muslims, women and children. How does that arise? That arises, look at this. This has nothing to do with 9/11 and the liberal society coming down upon Muslims. No, no. 1400 years ago, and I learned this from my teachers back in early 1992. That the Islamic ruling on killing those who are not Ahlul Qital, who are not soldiers, completely haram. And there is a consensus upon it. There is an ijma upon it, meaning the Muslim jurists had agreed over 1,000 odd years ago, more than 1,000 odd years ago, during the time of the Prophet and the Sahaba and the great Imams, that doing so is completely haram. Completely haram. And yet, if you look carefully in Abu Dawud, it just happens to be in Abu Dawud, from what I remember there might be in Bukhari. Oh, but there's a time that there's a hadith that says, oh, the Prophet ﷺ, he was asked that, look, some of the Sahaba, they said, look, we're fighting this enemy, and they're a really tough enemy, and they're kind of very tough to beat, and they've run into this fortress or a castle. Now, if we leave them overnight, if we leave them and go home, they will just regroup, re-strengthen, and it was already a hard battle. We barely had the advantage over them. If we allow them to regroup, then they're going to be even stronger. We're going to be in big trouble. But if we start bombing them from outside, there are some women and children in the castle as well. So we might end up killing their men then. And they did that. They bombed. They firebombed the fortress. In the morning, when they came in, they saw that there are some women and children killed, and there are the enemy killed. And they went to the Prophet and said, look, this is what happened. And the Prophet said, they are from them. The women and children are from them. They were amongst them, they're from them. So from this hadith, it looks like, oh, no problem. He just killed women and children. But all those hadiths, the Prophet said, do not kill the woman, do not kill the child, do not kill the monk, do not cut down the fruit-bearing tree, do not poison the rivers and whatever. And all those things in which the Meccan Mushrik women, after the Battle of Badr, when the Battle of Badr was over, some of their husbands and brothers and uncles were coming back. 1,000 of them were defeated by 300 Muslims. And so those who lived, they came back to Makkah, they said, oh, these Muslims are a tough bunch of people. And the women were saying, who are you? Are you men or are you mouse? You are 3 times their number. You are from Quraysh, you are from this, you are from that. And you couldn't even fight them? And for one whole year, many of the women were going to the Abu Jahals and all of the leaders of the mushriks and saying, oh, give us back our honor. And they would sing all of this war poetry, and they would sing all of this poetry to make the men feel small. And so 1 year later, some of the men thought, you know what, we have to get the women off of our backs. Let's just go and fight them again. Uhud. The Prophet knows that the mushrik women in Makkah were one of the main causes for riling up the men to fight the Muslims. And yet what does he say? Do not kill women and children. And some idiot is going to tell me that just because a woman or children lives in a democracy like the UK, and they voted in the government, who voted in the government? Half of the people in the country didn't even vote. No one voted in a hung government. And even if we were going back into the Tony Blair mujrim, criminal, mass murderer times, half the country came out against his war desire. And many of them were non-Muslims. They may have voted in the Labour Party, they didn't vote in the war policies. And those women and children didn't have access to Tony Blair like the mushrik women had access to the leaders of the Quraysh, knocking on their door, seeing them in the shopping, in the souk, in the market. No, in order to see Tony Blair, you'd have to get, well, you don't. And yet the Prophet says, don't kill women and children. So, what happens again? If we begin to break down this structure, be sure, once the door is open, the flood will come in. In the Asian subcontinent, this happened with so-called Muslim intellectuals. Some of them are intellectuals, some of them are juhal, most ignorant beasts you'll ever see. Full of arrogance. the Islamic rulings from some Urdu script. A'udhu billah. And so, once you break down the ulama, and of course, scholars are of different levels. Some scholars are very saintly, so hugely knowledgeable. Some scholars are not so much. But if you break down that and say, I can start doing it myself, and the Prophet has already predicted, Allah, and this is my last hadith, Allah, is in Sahih Bukhari, Allah does not take away knowledge by snatching it away from the hearts of people. But Allah takes away knowledge by taking away the ulama, the scholars, meaning the death of the scholars. Such that when no scholar remains, the people will take juhal, ignorant ones, as leaders. And they will ask these ignorant ones for iftar, for fatwa. And these ignorant ones will give fatwa to them. Dal mudil, misguiding themselves and misguiding others. This is why it is important. Whoever stands up on your minbar, whoever sits on your speaking table, whoever stands to guide you as the Muslim community in the Greenwich area, let them be Ahlul Isnad. Let them at least be part of an authorized chain. They will make mistakes and you can advise them. But let them be grounded in their knowledge, because shepherding human souls is absolutely important. And giving fatwas is more important than a triple bypass heart surgery. Because if you get that wrong, the body dies. You get that fatwa wrong and you misguide the people at the spiritual, raw level. And the consequences in the hereafter is, Ya Allah. And so when we follow the scholars, that doesn't mean that we don't try to gain, increase in our knowledge. But we need to learn less of law. I'm a working man. I've got my job. I've got my family. I've got my education. I'm going to do my A-levels. I'll be finishing do my degree. Whatever I'm doing of this, I just need to learn the law, the rules of prayer and fasting. And now I've got the money to go to Hajj. Ya Shaykh, run through the Hajj with me, and so that I can get it. And then most of my time should be internalizing those rules. Now that I know the rules of prayer, whether I fold in my hands here, fold in my hands there, there's some leeway. The Sunnah kind of allows a little bit of leeway. But now, more important than that, don't get me wrong, every outward rule of Islam is important. It came from Allah. Even the way that I clean my toes with wudu. And the Sunnah, ideal Sunnah, is to use your left hand, small finger, to clean inside your toes. Right? It's preferred to do that. Otherwise, any finger will do. And we don't say, oh, it's such a small thing. It came from Allah. Through the heart of the best of creation, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's important. If you and I don't recognize it's important, that's because of our ignorance, not because of anything to do with the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. But now that I've learned that thing, and then prayer, and I do this, that, and then let me internalize the prayer, so that I know who I'm standing in front of, so that the heart begins to weep, so that the heart begins to be in awe of God. That when the head bows in sujood on the floor, the heart is bowing with the head. And that may take years. But I have to concentrate on those matters. And then my outward character as well. That makes sure I know the rights. Because it's the minimum, it's makruh to talk in the mosque, even about permissible worldly affairs, when people are praying. Especially when there is no need, hajj or darura, because the need can be fulfilled downstairs or maybe outside in the cold, but downstairs definitely. And to do so is to go against the adab of respecting the worshippers. It is already hard to concentrate, let alone when I can hear someone's conversation. So I know the adab of my worshipping brethren. I know the adab of the elders here. Here I am, I'm 4 chairs in the mosque, let's say. And I want to sit on a chair, but actually maybe there's 9 elders who need to sit on a chair. Then I just have to say, oh, okay, Bismillah elder, because he's an elder and he has a haqq over me, a right over me. It doesn't matter if I know more hadith than him, if I know this, he's an elder. And when I get to be an elder, then I will have that same haqq over the youngsters. I have to know these things. These are not things that, oh, it's good if I know. No, I have to know these things. And this is why we don't get bogged down in law. We get bogged down in spirituality and adab and akhlaq and manners and courtesies. So that when we walk out the masjid, we are worshipping Allah according to the sharia, according to sound scholarly knowledge. And we're walking out with hearts becoming enlightened, our nafs becoming purified, tazkiyah is happening, our outward conduct of adab and akhlaq is becoming like nur. And then the best dawah that we give is the dawah where we don't talk, we just are. Yes, the best dawah is the dawah where you don't talk, you just do. You just be what you are. And the people see you and say, whoa, I know these people, they've got a funny way of worshipping, and they've got these funny eating habits. And those men, they have to grow these beards and whatever, but you know, there is light coming from them. There is tranquility in their life. There is beauty in their conduct. Their aspirations out of this world. I want to taste some of that. And then you talk to them. And then you talk to them. So there is so much we can do when everything is put in its right box. But if we let young people run the show, and if we let a new type of Islam break the structures of classical knowledge, learning and scholarship, even if there is 1% benefit, there will be 99% destruction. And we live in a time when that is happening. And that is why some of you will know when, and I don't want to dig up, because we are second and third generation Muslims here at least, but when the colonialists came to majority Muslim lands, initially they tried to invade it physically. In half of the Muslim lands they were repelled through physical warfare by the Muslims. And then they realized two things. Market dominance, I mean economic dominance, is probably going to work better than military dominance, which is still the way of the world now. And secondly, if we can start lowering the respect of the average Muslim for their scholars, once we break that bond between the lay people and their scholars, half of the war is already won. And so they started attacking the great institutions of learning and trying to make the hearts of the Muslims feel negative to their scholars and saying, oh, whatever, and you can be like this and this and this. And we started buying into that deception, and we're here today eating its bitter fruits in humiliation, worse than we were then. Why? When we were being defeated on the battlefield, but we had izzah, we had our own self-respect. The Muslim man was wearing a hat on his head. The Muslim man had the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Muslim man was in love with the Prophet ﷺ, even though there were different degrees of love of the various Muslims. But now today we are in love with consumerism. We are in love with the only civilization in history. There have been many. Chinese civilization, Hindu-Indian civilization, Persian, Greek, Byzantium, Roman, Christendom, the civilization of the people of Israel, the Israelites when they were at their heights in the time of David and Solomon alayhi salam, the Muslim civilization. Whatever civilization came before modern civilization, they all had spirituality as its basis. Whether they were spirituality believing in many gods like Mushrik Hindu civilization, like Buddhist civilizations, whether it's one God but with false beliefs like Christian civilization, whether it's many gods with the Romans, but they all had this thing that there are supernatural beings and deities that our civilization needs to be founded upon, not just dunya alone. And then modernity came, the modern world, and it says, get rid of it. What you see is what you get. Even if in the civilization there are religious, spiritual people, but the basis, the asl of this civilization is nothing to do with anything other than dunya. This is what makes it so different than anything and everything that is preceded, which is why we can never be content with this civilization, but we have to engage with it wisely, carefully, and with the help of Allah. But never could we be content with it. There could be no rida with a civilization that at the asl, there's not even God. Yes, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, this country was a Christian society, so we could be content with it, that there is God, even though it's kufr, they have the wrong beliefs, but at least there is the basis of God, akhirah, nabuwah. But this is not the case. So we engage with it from a position of discontent, but wisely and carefully. But at the moment, our hearts are drowning in it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for aid, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us understand how dirty our hearts are, how corrupt our souls are, how in need of Him we truly are. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that we are fuqara, we are truly poor in every sense of the word, and He is Ghaniyyun Hamid, He is the one who is infinitely rich and self-sufficient. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us true abidun, true worshippers and slaves of Him, and that He is our Rabb and Master. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He removes from our hearts any form of kibr and place in our hearts humility. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives us ilm, knowledge that is beneficial, and He gives us understanding which is sound and firm, and that He make us bring us together upon brotherhood. Allahumma alif bayna qulubina wa asli dhata baynina wa janna min al-rashidin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Allahumma aykatna min al-ghafalat wa najjina min al-darakat wa kaffir anna adhunuba wa sayyi'at wa janna min al-rashidin wa janna min al-muttaqin. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.